The political situation in Bangladesh has reached a stalemate. One UK-based commentator has labelled it as inflection point. The two major political parties, the Awami League and the BNP, have been unable to agree on a way to hold fair and credible election. The current regime, led by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, wants to rig the upcoming election at the end of this year. They have rigged the national election in 2014. Only 5% voters voted. 153 out of 300 seats were won uncontested by Awami League. In 2018, the election was rigged to the extent that ballot boxes were stuffed by party members and government officials night before the election. BNP, which is the main opposition, has demanded that the upcoming general election be held under a neutral, non-partisan caretaker government. They also called for the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina before the election. Polls suggest that majority of Bangladeshis think that an election under caretaker government is the right way forward. Sheikh Hasina knows that her party cannot win the next election unless she has full control over the civil administration and police during the election. The BNP, on the other hand, holds the view that they cannot win the next election unless it's a fair election held by neutral, non-partisan caretaker government. The international scenario is slightly ambiguous. It seems that China, India and Russia are behind the current regime. Most certainly, they will accept a rigged election at the end of this year, as they did in 2019. The United States, EU and UK, on the other hand, seems to be serious about a fair electoral process, regardless of the political parties. They want to see a free, fair and inclusive election. However, they haven't said yet how an acceptable election would take place. It's an important question. There is a widespread belief among the members of the ruling Awami League and the government officials that they should go for full-scale rigging, because after the election everyone will forget what happened. There will be few sanctions here and there, but India will manage the Americans and things would be BAU. I have no idea what the basis of this confidence is, but almost every local operator in Bangladesh believes that the Indian government has a strong relationship with the US government, and they will convince the Americans about Sheikh Hasina's next tenure. In short, this is how things stand in Bangladesh in terms of politics and the upcoming election. To be honest, if you are a Bangladeshi, you know one thing very well. The chances of Real Madrid winning the next Cricket World Cup are much higher than Sheikh Hasina conducting a free and fair election. It's just impossible. First, you need to know who are Sheikh Hasina's supporters. Sheikh Hasina's supporters are a relatively small group of corrupt government officials, police officers, and party members who have benefited greatly from the regime. They are extremely powerful and obscenely rich. These elite parasites know very well that in a free and fair election, the Bangladesh Awami League, led by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, would probably be obliterated from the electoral landscape. If the opposition knowingly participates in a rigged election, it kind of legitimizes a corrupt electoral process. BNP did this in 2018, and they know very well that if they do it again this year, they will lose their own support base. They would rather not participate in a rigged election than win 100 seats in a managed election. There is one crucial thing to understand, it's very important. According to the current law, the parliament is not dissolved before the election and Sheikh Hasina remains the prime minister. From an administrative point of view, there is absolutely no difference between today and the election day. By law, the government officials will have to take orders from the very people who are participating in that election. Does that make any sense? It's like expecting a cat to stop being a diva and start doing dishes. You need to understand that even if she wants to remain neutral for one day, the election will not be fair. She simply cannot deliver a free, fair and participatory election. It is no longer in her hands. Let's be real. A fair election in Bangladesh is as likely as a unicorn walking into this room. The government has weaponized every institution, the judiciary, military, media, you name it. They have spent 15 years recruiting party members and loyalists into all important government institutions. It's corruption on a whole new level. People who are not from Bangladesh may not understand the extent of corruption in Bangladesh. I'll give you a comparison. It helps. Former Pakistani military chief, General Bajwa, is widely criticized in Pakistan and India for gathering wealth through unlawful means. A simple Google search will show that he is allegedly worth around $44 million. While I can't confirm the accuracy of this figure or whether he is actually corrupt, it's a significant amount of money. In contrast, a bank employee in Bangladesh named PK Haldar has been charged with embezzling over $100 million. General Bajwa was the head of Pakistan military. It is perhaps the biggest conglomerate in the subcontinent. Its operations are so diverse that it has a full-fledged army. $44 million. PK Haldar, a mid-tier banker with a lot of girlfriends, although I'm not sure whether his girlfriends know his middle name. $100 million. Now, what do you think would happen to all the PK Haldars if there is a regime change? It is precisely for this reason that Sheikh Hasina promotes corrupt personnel to important positions. This is so that they have a vested interest in going against the will of the people on the election day. The current head of police, Chaudhry Abdullah Al-Mamoon, who was appointed last year, this person is accused of enforced disappearance among other grave crimes. Indeed, he is among 7 Bangladeshi senior law enforcement officials who were sanctioned by the US Treasury Department for serious human rights violations. Common sense says Sheikh Hasina could have picked someone else who is not in the list to be in the good book of the US. Mind you, at the time of his appointment, she knew very well that this person is in the sanction list. She picked Chaudhry because she knows very well that an officer who is already sanctioned has nothing more to lose. He would bend the laws for his own survival. It's in his interest to rig the election. The election would be rigged even if the election day is relatively fair. Let me break it down for you. The election in our country is a complete sham. Every institution is controlled by government, the judiciary, police, administration, and media. The opposition leader is under house arrest for more than 5 years. Her replacement is in London, unable to return. The government has cooked up charges against every senior opposition leader. They'll be disqualified from running and thrown in jail on fake charges. The police will harass opposition supporters and the media will look other way. It's corrupt and completely rigged. And that's not all. I know at least 5 people who went to the polling booth in last election only to find that the polling agents of Awami League were already there. The agents took their ballot papers and voted Awami League candidates. Imagine a police officer or election official on the ground. This person knows very well that Sheikh Hasina wants to be in power indefinitely. She has publicly said, "I don't want to know much. I just need power and that's all." That's the language of Al Capone, not a prime minister. If this government official becomes an obstacle to her will, what would happen to this little man? He knows that the election will be hijacked anyways. If the Awami League candidate is not elected in this constituency, it would be a red flag to his career. Do you think this guy would act independently or conscientiously? 2 national elections and 10 years have been wasted. Everyone in Bangladesh knows how elections are held by Sheikh Hasina. Putting pressure on her to hold a free and fair election is like giving tons of money to a drug addict and expecting he won't do drugs and go to rehab. It ain't gonna happen. The international community should take a firm view on caretaker government, not only for Bangladesh, but for all hybrid regimes. It has worked before, and all the credible elections in this country was held under caretaker government. If you allow her to go on with her plans, she would rig the election. Tell me, have you ever heard of a dictator who lost an election? Exactly. The ability to rig the election is what makes them tin pot dictators in the first place. I can guarantee the day after the election, all the bad actors would come into foray and say, people of Bangladesh have decided their own fate. They wouldn't question the electoral process because it's convenient for them to discuss the results. It's good for the business. Let people of Bangladesh choose their own future. And there is only one way to choose their political future. It's a free, fair, and inclusive election which can only happen under a caretaker government. Thank you.